retreat to some college kids on her new book on dating, and the university kicked us off campus. So to me, it's almost an insult to the college kids that that you don't have enough confidence in their critical thinking abilities that they would be allowed to hear alternative viewpoints and sift through the merits of someone else's argument. You got to shield your students from having that to use that mental effort. But be it as it may, several of the talks were canceled, and then several were rebooked under new venues. But we ended up last minute having to cancel the trip as my whole family's been sacked with the flu. So 7 of the 8 kids have it, including myself. So we had to stay back to take care of them. But now we're rescheduling the trip, and we'll be doing it again soon.
I guess that's the irony. You might have had to have canceled it anyways, right? For being sick yourself. Hey, is this in 21 years? Is this a first? Has anything like this ever happened before to you?
Not on this scale with regard to the media. I mean, it's been a blessing because, visits to our websites and YouTube videos have gone through the roof because all these articles are pointing people to check us out. So that's been nice. But, it's happened in the past. One public school in New York canceled my talk, and the principal said that the teachers, they had to cancel it because the teachers were afraid I was going to say a particular word. And I said, well, what's the word? I said, it's a public school talk. I'm not going to say anything religious. And she said, they're afraid you're going to say the word marriage during your talk.
Oh, gosh. God forbid, right?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah.
That's not the word I was thinking. I had thought some other words that you might have a hard time saying, but marriage, wow, that is amazing. Yeah. I've known of your work and Kristalina's work all the way going back to Catholic Answers Live and right now with the Catholic Project, Chastity Project. I've never thought it as being controversial among sane people. You're just basically giving the church's teaching on these issues. Is it, as I mentioned, is it all about homosexuality and marriage issues? Is that the issue, or do they just not like anything you're saying these days?
No, that's mainly the issue, contraception and homosexuality. It's not that they love what I had to say about chastity in general, but when I find here in the States, when for example, a Catholic school does not want to have me come, when you really start to dig in what it is, it's one of those two issues 99% of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's the really hot button issues. I remember speaking at a public school up in Canada, and the teacher said, oh, please do not say anything about homosexuality or transgenderism. And I said, oh, can I just tell you what I would say in the talk, and then you can tell me if that is okay? And I shared with her what I would say in the talk, and she said, oh, please go ahead and say that. The kids really need to hear it. And so they need to understand, the church's teachings is not one of hate-mongering. I've seen the comments that have been said about me on the Irish news websites of just how they just view our position as just hate-mongering and homophobia and all these different names. But chastity is good news. It's part of the gospel. It's not something we have to shield children from for the sake of their mental well-being. It's something that they have a right to learn about so they can discover God's plan for love.
Yeah. Has the climate changed? I know the answer to that. It certainly has, especially in the last 20 years. But, we hear about the LGBTQ, whatever, juggernaut. That's a word the words that gets bandied out about, that there's this juggernaut, there's this tyranny that they just do not want any discussion. It's a formidable force and even getting stronger in the culture inside and outside the church, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's all under this banner of inclusivity and celebrating diversity. But you really look into it, and it's not inclusivity, it's exclusivity. I looked at one of the comments someone wrote on about me online. He said, "Don't come back to Ireland. We have a habit of calling the fairies on people like you. Fairies have big cauldrons where they boil Christians. Ha ha."
Wow.
I'm like, wow. And it's just what a priest said to me. He said, "Look, Ireland is a country searching for its own soul right now."
Yeah.
Another friend said he described it as almost like a corpse. That the faith there is toxic. It's almost as if they were raised in this overly rigid environment for centuries, and now they're just casting off those shackles and kind of discovering everything for themselves, like a teenager running away from home. But I think, God willing, it won't be too long before they realize the faith of the fathers was not a curse and a restriction of their freedom, but their very heritage.
Yeah. Well, I'm married to an Irish woman. I got married over there, so I'm very, very tuned in to the culture. They voted, here in America, so-called gay marriage was kind of thrust upon us by the Supreme Court, but they actually voted on it in May of 2015. They also voted in, I believe, abortion. So like you say, things are just spiraling downward. Do you fear a domino effect? Do you think that other countries, now you've all of a sudden become like the Ann Coulter or the Milo Yiannopoulos, this controversial figure? I mean, well, what do you think is going to happen as far as future bookings, especially in Europe?
I think it's going to be challenging, and that they're going to be fewer and far between. Partly because I don't think it's getting preached from the pulpit.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we have enough solid bishops in Western Europe that are really proclaiming this, teaching it in the seminaries, teaching it to their priests? Are the faithful really hearing this at all? And what's scary demographically is that so many Catholics have bought off on the sexual revolution and contraception, limiting the size of their families, that nobody's having kids in Western Europe except for the Muslims. And, give it a couple, decades, and they're going to be the bulk of the population in Europe. And we're going to see a massive demographic shift because Ireland and much of Europe is contracepting and aborting themselves into oblivion.
Yeah, amazing. Chastity.com is the website. Jason Evert, along with his wife, Kristalina, founders. They've been doing it for 21 years. They have been disinvited by several Catholic schools and organizations in Ireland, but as he mentioned, he is going to go back. And, Jason, you mentioned about that one speaker organizer who said, what are you going to say about homosexuality? And once you said it, she said, oh, wow, this is great. And just for the record, because there's probably some people listening this morning thinking, well, what does the Catholic Church teach about homosexuality? What is this controversy that's, that Jason Evert is causing? Can you tell our listeners, when you give a talk, maybe, give us the short version, well, what is the teaching on homosexuality?
Well, what I'll tell the kids is that the world often tells them that, if you experience these attractions, then you only have two options. I mean, you can either hide in the closet out of fear and shame that if anyone knew you had these feelings, they'd hate you and be bigoted against you, or come out of the closet, embrace your attractions as your identity, forget about God, the church, and the Bible, and do whatever you want with your body. Gay pride, gay shame, what's your pick? And some kids just feel stuck in the middle, like, well, I don't want to throw away God, but I don't want to live in shame, but will people hate me? Some people will. See their protest signs, God hates gays. I'm like, no, God hates your stupid sign, okay? He didn't hate you. But there's this third option, which is realizing that chastity is a virtue that you can practice, that your identity is not your sexual attractions. If anyone in the world defines their identity by their sexual attractions, life is going to get real confusing real fast. So if you're a young person who experiences homosexual attractions, your identity isn't gay any more than my identity is straight. Your identity is you're a beloved son or daughter of God, and your behavior can flow from that identity. And this does not mean a life of misery and loneliness and repression and self-denial. Chastity is a virtue that leads to human flourishing. And so what I try to do is I point the kids to our website, which is chastity.com, and I tell them, click the button homosexuality, watch the videos, read the blogs. They're done by people who experience these attractions and have found great joy in embracing the virtue of chastity in their lives. But don't take my word for it. You got to watch them share their stories. Because, look, experiencing attraction is not a sin, nor is it your identity. And so God is calling you to become a saint, and the website will help to explain how.
Wow, that's beautiful. That doesn't sound controversial to me. It's a response in love. Jason, got to go, but I'm glad to see, as you mentioned before, that the controversy is bringing more people to your website, and I hope you book 10 talks based on this interview alone. And so if people want to book you, I know you've got a lot of other speakers that work with the Chastity Project as well. Maybe just kind of give us a little summary of maybe some of the speakers, the topics, and how they can book you.
Yeah, if you just go to chastity.com, you can click on the different people. For example, kids don't need to hear about chastity once every 4 years. They need to hear about it more often than that. So you can book someone like Matt Fradd to come in to speak on pornography, or someone like Sarah Swafford on emotional virtue. And then you can also get all the resources we have. All the books on the website are $3 and less, so that you can get boxes of these things and give them out to your youth group. If you can't afford the boxes, just email us. We'll send them to you for free to give this message out to the world. And so all that you can find at chastity.com.
All right, Jason, thanks so much. And, of course, everybody pray for Jason, pray for all the speakers, for Kristalina and the Chastity Project, because they are under fire. But I think that's a good sign, because if you're not, when you're speaking the truth, sometimes you get in the crosshairs of the world. So, Jason, thanks for what you do. And, again, the website is chastity.com. Stay strong, brother, and thanks for taking some time with us this morning.
Thanks for having me on. God bless.
God bless you. Thanks, Jason. All right, very interesting. A lot there, huh?
A lot there, indeed.
Yeah. So where do we start?
What a great witness.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that occurred to me is the truth will set you free.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is the community up there in Ireland telling him not to come?
Yeah.
They don't want the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't even want to debate.
Oh, yeah.
This is a more of this unwillingness to even have a discussion.
Yeah. You know, I was talking to my wife. You know, my wife is Irish, and last night at dinner I was telling her about the interview with Jason and all that, and she said, you know, you got to factor in the sexual abuse scandal, you know, because there's a huge sex abuse scandal. A lot of people have lost trust in the church. And so,
in Ireland,
in Ireland. And when leaders start saying, you know, chastity, they see hypocrisy.
Right.
And so Jason, even though he's not a priest, represents the Catholic Church. And so you got to, and not to say that, I mean, I totally disagree with them disinviting Jason, but there's a root problem there that's going to take time to get out.
And he did point out the the background. When I was there in the 90s, it was the early 90s, we're driving around in a bus, and suddenly everyone's like signing themselves. I'm thinking, what on earth is going on in unison? So they had this, great cultural Catholicism, but somehow the heart seemed to die,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, cultural Catholicism is excellent. It's very important. But when the heart dies, then when you finally throw off that shell, it's like that's what they're looking at. So I think he makes a really good point. They're tired of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think when it's a culture is Catholic, in this day and age, we need to be stronger than just like culturally Catholic, because there's so much opposing views and stuff like that. Because I think in the past it might have been easier to like just because the whole community had a Christian, overall morals and things like that were a little bit all over the community. But nowadays we need to be a little bit stronger like that. So yeah, like you said.
So what I'm just pointing out that cultural practices and like things like the fish fry, right?
Uh-huh.
That we had in the 50s and the 40s up in in the north, in the Midwest. Those kinds of things are very important. They're part of our, like nowadays, what is their cultural thing? It's the Super Bowl, it's buffalo wings.
Mm-hmm.
You and I are not going to be watching the Super Bowl. So I'm saying it's just that these kinds of things are actually part of humanly living an outlook. Now, here's the issue. Our outlook is gutted of religion. We're not allowed to be religious. And finally, the movement is called liberalism. Finally, the movement is no longer allowing peace. You have your view, I have my view. They're not letting us even have our views and our thoughts. So that's where this hate speech kind of stuff is crushing even thought. You can't even have the thought.
I know it's amazing, and you see. I mean, we all feel the pressure. I mean, if you want to go on, Facebook and say something about pro-life, that's still something you can probably talk about. But you want to post something about anything having to do with homosexuality or LGBT, and you're thinking like, oh my goodness, I may not be able to get a job down the road, or there's going to be. I mean, it's thought police. It's like you can't even. But
it's also mob police.
Yeah, it's the mob.
The mob goes to the administration. I mean, it happens in Ireland, it happens in Canada, happens here. Although Canada's probably even more to be. I mean, they've got legislation on this.
Yeah. What do y'all think about it? If you're listening and you have a thought, be quick, because we got to change topics in about 4 minutes. Okay? But we want to hear from you. 877-757-9424. 877-757-9424. He talked about Ireland searching for its own soul. He said it's like a corpse. He compared it to almost like a rebellious teenager.
So I have a priest friend who left Ireland. He got reassigned to California.
Yeah.
He says he's breathing fresh air. That's how
in
bad
California?
it is. Yes.
Yes. That says a lot, doesn't it?
That is
So we don't realize, because I kept thinking if America goes up in smoke, I'm moving back to Ireland. I'm Irish. And probably not.
No.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, it's really sad. Gosh, imagine if you moved from California to someplace like Texas, or even the air would even be fresher, right?
Yeah.
But it's I like what Everett said about it's almost like a hypersexualization. Everything is sexualized
Yes.
these days.
Yeah.
It's too much, too
Right.
early. And they're bringing it on the kindergartners and everything. Just let them, run around. Let them even play a video game for like 5 minutes when they're 10. Just run around, throw the football, relax,
Right.
be human.
And it doesn't end with LGBT rights. Now it's transgenderism, and it's pronouns, and it's
Or it's even just simply sex education, period, and chastity, and saving yourself for marriage. That's not even it's being contested to be taught.
That's right.
And I really liked what he said, that identity is not your sexual attraction, because that is all that it seems to be today. That is your identity, and it's all tied up in emotions, and so it is very difficult to discuss with anybody. I have lots of friends in college who are gay or very supportive of gay of LGBT rights and stuff like that. And it's hard to even, how do you open that conversation? Because it's like, but it makes them happy, and that's so hard to tell someone, well, you're not experiencing true joy. You're just it's pleasure. It's not
Interestingly, the New York Times published a piece of someone who is about to do this transgender operation. He knew the studies. The studies are that it doesn't make anyone happier. It makes them more miserable. And he said, I expect to be more miserable, but I want to be able to do it. Now, but the thing is, we are fundamentally human, and human either male or female, and then we have our, as it were, sexual habits, like of attraction and that kind of thing. So the first thing is male or female. Then there's the attraction. But these people are making the attraction like the essence of what you are.
Yeah. It's there's some philosophical roots there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Some basic, interesting. Well, I'll tell you what. It's 30 minutes after the hour, and we have arranged to have Mark Bromley on with us for most of the second half of this program, and he is right in the middle of the firestorm that I think it was Sunday when the news came out that this book, From the Depths of Our Hearts, became controversial because it was co-authored by Cardinal Robert Serra and also Pope Emeritus Benedictt XVI. They're both on the cover, and everything's good. And then it came out that Pope Benedict's secretary was saying no, he was surprised to know that he was a co-author. He didn't want to be on the cover. He may have contributed some, but he's not this whole controversy.
Or even prior to that, the accusation that he's pretty much sleeping the whole time, so how could he have done anything towards this?
Right. And so then Ignatius Press had a decision to make about do we take him off or what? And Ignatius Press sent out a statement and basically said there's two authors. And Mark Bromley is the one who wrote this statement. So they're sticking by it. And I'm sure they're selling a lot of these books, but Pope Benedictt, according to Ignatius Press, is the co-author, and even Father Fessio said he has read the text in French and English and said only Benedict could have written it. He's a close friend of Pope Benedict, so he knows his writing. And so, anyways, Mark Bromley is going to join us here in a few minutes. We're going to take a break, and we'd love to have your thoughts on it and also, as we mentioned before, what about the topic of the book? That's even more important than the controversy over whether, Pope Benedict was the co-author or not. All right, give us a call, 877-757-9424. Quick break. We'll be back with GRN Alive Friday edition right after this.
Hi, Joe McLean here, and I have some exciting news to share with you. The Guadalupe Radio Network is rolling out a new texting tool designed to serve you better, provide exclusive content, provide first access to relevant and timely information, and two-way dialogues during our live program. Become a founding member. It's easy. Pull out your phone and text GRN to 444-999. Again, text GRN to 444-999, and may God richly bless you.
Instead of fighting the crowds, isn't it so much easier to hop online and do your shopping in the comfort of your own home? Did you know that you can help the Guadalupe Radio Network when you shop online? All you need to do is shop on Amazon Smile, and 0.5% of your purchase goes to the GRN. Just go to AmazonSmile.com and select La Promesa Foundation as your nonprofit of choice. La Promesa is the parent company of Guadalupe Radio. It's that simple to give a little extra help to the Guadalupe Radio Network.
The second promise the Guadalupe Radio Network made in 1996 was to carry out the mission of evangelization as called for by baptism. The new evangelization calls for each one of us to deepen our faith, believe in the gospel message, and then go forth to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, the new evangelization consists of 3 parts: knowing your faith, living your faith, and sharing your faith. That is exactly what the Guadalupe Radio Network, through its programming, is doing. Some of the programs help us learn our faith. Other programs encourage us then to live that faith. And finally, some programs motivate us to then share our faith with others. The GRN programming continually stimulates us to grow in our relationship with Jesus Christ and to help others do the same. Together, we are one Guadalupe Radio Network family. We are radio for your soul. This is Len Oswald, president of the GRN, with your GRN Family Minute.
And we are back. This is GRN Alive. We're live across the entire network this morning, and we are glad you are here. Not only the radio network, but Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and so we are going everywhere. 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. My name is Dave Palmer. Sissel Anderson is here. Dr. Chris Malloy is here with us. He is working on a book called Against Recent Heresies, and he has promised that it's going to be published this year, one way or the other.
I'll be done with it this year. Hopefully I can get a publisher.
All right. Another guy who knows a little bit about book publishing is Mark Brumley, president of Ignatius Press. They're located online at ignatius.com, founded by Father Joseph Fessio many years ago. And a little bit of controversy has been stirred up this week from one of their books called From the Depths of Our Hearts, Priesthood, Celibacy, and the Crisis of the Catholic Church. If you go to ignatius.com, it's described as the most important Catholic book of the year by 2 great spiritual leaders about the crisis in the priesthood and the nature of the church and Christian discipleship. Keyword there is 2 authors. Mark Brumley, good morning. How you doing? Mark Brumley, you there?
Fine. How are you doing?
Good.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. Good to hear from you. Dave Palmer here. Dr. Malloy is with us from University of Dallas. Sissel Anderson, so you may be hearing multiple voices asking questions, okay? The controversy, did it take you by surprise? Maybe get us up to date on what's going on? I know you issued a statement. What's the latest?
Well, there's really been no change from the statement that we issued. The controversy didn't take me by surprise in the sense that we knew that a book by these 2 men on this topic at this time would get a lot of attention. But the aspect of the controversy that has to do with authorship completely has taken us by surprise, seeing as how we have we received a manuscript that is written by 2 people, or at least purports to be written by 2 people, and we have a contract with a publisher in France that indicates these 2 people, Benedictt XVI and Robert Seurat, are authors. And if you read the text of the book, there really are just 4 chapters, there are 2 chapters and 2 other sections, an introduction and a conclusion. Apart from an editor's note, you'll see that one chapter is explicitly by Benedictt XVI. The other chapter is by Robert Cardinal Seurat. The introduction is written in the first person plural, we, throughout. We did this, we did that, we say this, we think that. And the conclusion is similarly written in the first person plural, we did this, we did that. So there are all these questions. I keep seeing these statements about, well, supposedly this was not approved, or supposedly Benedict did not see the cover. And of course, that's all contradicted by Robert Seurat, Cardinal Seurat. But the actual text itself presents itself as being a co-authored work. So you can see why we would find this very perplexing. At the very least, we need, as publishers, explanations for how such a manuscript came to us. So anyway, that's the background. You can even apart from the question. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I guess there's a delay, so that's a little awkward, and I apologize for that on our side. That's Chris Malloy. Tough question, if you don't mind. If the French publisher has decided to, bring Pope Benedict's name down to, with a contribution from Why hasn't Ignatius?
We haven't been told to.
Oh, I see.
So
There you go.
So
it's really that simple.
So is Gainsfain the one who contacted the French publisher then?
I have no idea. All I have are media accounts.
yeah,
No one has
Crazy.
explained anything to us.
Crazy.
I guess the question, Mark, that
So-
comes to my
so-
mind. Oh, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say, so we have a book at the printer. We have a contract that explains that we are required by contract to publish the book by these two authors with the title "From the Depths of Not My Heart, but Our Hearts."
Yeah,
And
in the very
so
title
that's-
of the book. Yeah.
That's what the book is about.
Mark, I know Father Fessio and Pope Benedictt are friends. They know each other well, and we're hearing from Pope Emeritus Benedictt, I should say, from his personal secretary. Is there no way of getting a statement or a comment directly from the previous Holy Father, or is everything coming through different channels? I think that might be some of the confusion.
You know what? That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. We sent a communication to Archbishop Ganswein when this controversy first broke, and it was alleged on Twitter that Benedictt was not the co-author. We've gotten no response.
Yeah. Let me go to a phone call. We're talking to Mark
anyway,
Brumley.
I don't. All this detail and all of that. You can summarize it as follows. As publisher, we are not going to proceed on the basis of media accounts and social media statements and so on.
Yeah, that's rumor and innuendo.
People know where we are.
Yeah. They can contact you.
They know where we are. They
makes-
know how to get in touch with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I think all the evidence certainly goes to show that there were two authors. Hey, let's go to the phones. Lucy in Dallas has been holding on for a second. We're talking to Mark Brumley. He's president of Ignatius Press, the publishers of From the Depths of Our Hearts, Priesthood, Celibacy, and the Crisis of the Catholic Church. And I do want to talk about the content of the book because I think that's really important, and that's something that has not been getting
There's
as
something
much
between the
talk.
cover and the back.
Yes, exactly. Okay, Lucy in Dallas is calling. Hi, Lucy. What's your question or comment?
Yes, hi. Good morning, Dave. Good morning, Mr. Brumley and Dr. Malloy. I just wanted to say that I think this is all, as far as like the content, you have this, and I totally believe it is co-authored fully by Pope Benedictt and Cardinal Sarah. There's various evidence for it. I've been following this, and I think they did it in this beautiful spirit to say, explain the point of why celibacy is so important in the priesthood, because and actually they take in there and agree with Pope Francis comments that he had made previously, and I think it's to underline and strengthen that which he had said, because we're all kind of sensing that this thing is coming probably this spring, to follow up with the Amazon synod, that they're going to break and start allowing married priests, because there aren't enough priests in the Amazon, so they're going to allow married priests to go there. Well, once that happens, this has been a setup. This whole thing is there's a huge I don't know what you would call them, progressive or a group in the Vatican that are trying to promote this, along with various bishops, especially from Germany, that are trying to change what has been the case for 2,000 years.
Lucy, you bring up a great point.
Catholic.
I'm sorry, I just want to cut you off because for the sake of time, because I want Mark to be able to comment. I love, because that's something that we wanted to talk about as well. The timing of it, we're all anticipating the document, the coming out, calling it New Paths for the Church and for an Integral Ecology from the Amazon Synod. So let me put you on hold and let Mark comment on that. Mark?
Well, certainly, the authors are focusing on the role of the priesthood in the church. Obviously, priesthood is central to the church. The church isn't reducible to her hierarchy, and the hierarchy isn't reducible to the priesthood. But the priesthood is very, very important. And the two authors emphasize that a deep dimension of priestly life is tied in with celibacy. That doesn't mean that it's, theologically impossible to have a married priest. Obviously, we have in the Eastern Rites in the Catholic Church married priests. It's a relatively small, tiny minority of Catholics in Eastern Rites and tiny minority of priests in the world that are married, but they exist. And then likewise, we have a tiny number of priests in the Latin Rite who are married priests. So there are exceptions, and Benedictt and Cardinal Seurat recognize that these are exceptions. But the general rule, as they understand priesthood and as they present the tradition and the perspective of the Latin Rite in the Catholic Church, which, as they say, is the overwhelming majority of Catholics and the overwhelming majority of priests, has a close relation. There's a close relationship between celibacy and priesthood, and the ministerial priest more closely resembles the priesthood of Jesus, which he acts in the person of, in persona Christi, more closely resembles the priesthood of Jesus. Jesus was celibate. He had dedicated himself totally to the service of God and the furtherance of God's kingdom and establishment of the church. He is the bridegroom of the church. So to the extent you want to speak of Jesus as married, he's married to the church. And obviously, a Latin Rite priest is going to more closely resemble that because he's committed to celibacy. So the politics of the Amazonian Synod and all of that, I'm not saying that's unimportant, or the politics that's supposedly taking place in the Vatican, not saying that's unimportant. But those points aren't really the focus of this book. This book is focusing on the importance of priestly ministry, the nature of priestly ministry, and how we get out of this crisis in the church. And these men point to a renewed understanding of priesthood as closely bound up with celibacy. Celibacy is a total commitment to the service of God and God's people in the church.
Mark, we just had Jason Evert, an interview with Jason Evert, and he was speaking about chastity. And it seems to me what ties these two things together: chastity in the sense of the lay people exercise. Even married, he didn't get into that, but chastity being a virtue that our culture really doesn't recognize. I mean, it's all about the passions. You feel it, go for it. Do you have any comment on the value of celibacy as a virtue? That because people will say, oh well, a big argument is, well, these priests can't control themselves because they're celibate, so therefore they're abusing people. Some people make that argument.
Right. Well, of course, somebody who's not married is supposed to not engage in sexual relations because sexual relations are they're part of marriage, and they reflect an aspect or dimension of marriage as a one flesh union between one man and one woman. That's what sexual relations, sexual expression is for and what it means. And if you're not married, then you ought not to be engaging in sexual relations. Is that challenging? Well, for some people, it's more challenging than for others. And in a culture that's obsessed with sexual gratification, yeah, it can be challenging.
Yep.
But there are lots of things that are challenging. We live in a society, a very materialistic society, where we are relatively affluent, and that affluence and materialism can be challenging to Christians who are called to live a certain measure of detachment from material goods, to use things properly, and to be generous to those who are poor. So given the fact that we're called to do that, we don't say, well, because that's difficult, it's okay. I can be as wealthy as I please. I can do whatever I want with my money. I don't have to be concerned about the poor. I don't have to be concerned about others in financial need, because that's that I have this tendency, this desire, this craving. So that's all okay. Well, no, it isn't okay. And similarly with respect to chastity, our inclination towards sexual union with someone of the opposite sex has to be properly and intelligently ordered by our development of virtue and the choices we make. So that's true of everybody. It's especially true of those who enter into priestly ministry with the commitment to celibacy in the priesthood comes the grace to live that out. Now, not everybody is faithful to that.
Yeah,
they have problems like we all have problems. Not everybody's faithful in marriage, but you don't change. You don't deal with the problem of infidelity by letting people marry as many times as they want, or to change the rule of celibacy.
All right. Mark Brumley joins us, and the book is called From the Depths of Our Hearts, Priesthood, Celibacy, and the Crisis of the Catholic Church. You can find that and many other awesome Catholic books at Ignatius.com. It's described as the most important Catholic book of the year by two great spiritual leaders about the crisis in the priesthood and the nature of the church and Christian discipleship. Let's go back to the phones. Phone number 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. John, I'm not sure where John's calling from, but he's somewhere, and he's listening to GRN Alive this morning. John, thanks for calling. What's your question or comment for Mark Brumley?
Well, my comment was that the previous lady who called from Dallas, I think was intimating that two popes means two churches, and we cannot have two popes, and we wouldn't even have much of these problems we're having if we weren't in this state where we have two popes. And it has felt just wrong since the moment it happened in my bone and every being. And I feel the lady was commenting the kind of writings on the wall to break the church, and we cannot let that happen. We cannot have two popes. Just can't be one church. That's the goal is to unite God's church, not continue to break it apart. And I don't understand how the folks who oversee all this don't understand that the flock, we're not ignorant. We can see what is happening very clearly. That's my comment. The other thing about celibacy, very few people in this world understand the impact of the physical realm on our soulful beings, and we're so lost to the physical world. There seem to be fewer and fewer who really understand what our true nature and state on this wonderful, beautiful planet that God has created for.
John, thank you so much. You a lot there, two different topics, and I want to go to Mark now. Appreciate the call very much, John. Mark, John's got a good point. I guess historically it's a little odd for a pope to abdicate and then continue to wear the outfit of a pope, I guess for lack of a better word, continue to go by the title Pope Emeritus. Do you agree with John that there might be some confusion that's being caused by the way that Pope Emeritus Benedictt is carrying out his post-pope life?
Possibly, but I'm going to say both Pope Emeritus Benedictt and Pope Francis have made it clear there is really only one pope. That's Pope Francis. Benedict is not pope. In no way, shape, or form is he pope. He's retired. We often speak of emeritus bishops in the Catholic Church, and that just means that this person used to be the bishop. He's still a bishop, but he doesn't have diocesan responsibility. Well, the difference between a diocesan bishop who's retired and a pope who's retired is that a pope, although he remains a bishop, is no longer the pope. Pope is a designation for the exercise of episcopal ministry in a very specific context, that is, as the Bishop of Rome. And once he retires, he ceases to be the Bishop of Rome. And so Benedict is not the Bishop of Rome, and therefore he's not the Pope. He's a former Pope, an emeritus Pope. He's not the Pope. So everybody should be clear about that. I know Benedict wanted to be called Father Benedict, but for whatever reason, this term Pope Emeritus, became the way people refer to him. And I think it's fine as long as we understand what it means, and we don't think it means that he's Pope number 2.
Yeah, theologically,
part of the
there can't be two popes.
Movie.
I'm sorry.
We said this movie, The Two Popes. Well, that misrepresents reality. There aren't two popes. There's only one.
That's right. There can't be two.
All right, Mark Brumley joins us from Ignatius Press. The book is called From the Depths of Our Hearts, Priesthood, Celibacy, and the Crisis of the Catholic Church. And phone number if you want to call, just about to run out of time, though, 877-757-9424. And Mark, normally, the interview just on the book itself would have been great to have you on about. What else do you want to tell us about the content of it? For those who, of course, we encourage people to go and by it. It's like Jason Evert, when he got disinvited to Ireland, he said the visits to his website just went skyrocketing. And maybe that's one of the good things, is that the controversy brings attention to the book, and hopefully people will not only focus on the controversy, but what these two authors were getting at. So what else, as far as the content, would you like to share with our listeners that's important if they pick up this book?
Well, I'd like people to understand this is really not just a book for priests, although priesthood is at the heart of it. Understanding every Catholic should understand the priesthood. Every Catholic should understand the role the priesthood has in the larger church. And we should understand what celibacy is about. That this isn't just simply a negative thing, but it's a positive thing. It's a freeing up of aspects of one's life so that those things can be totally given over to the service of God and totally given over to the service of God's people. So we are all called to holiness. We are all called to put God first in our lives. But for married people, we are called to holiness and putting God first in our lives in ways that takes into consideration our marriage and our children, our family life. For priests, they are called to holiness and putting God first in their lives, just like everybody else. But the way that the particular form that takes is by being freed up to serve the church completely, to not have a responsibility to family and so on, but to be able to live that full call of God upon their lives in service to the church in a total radical way. And that should be a witness to all the rest of us. The other takeaway, I think, from this is we need to pray for our priests and support our priests. They're going through a very rough time, as the authors say at the beginning of the book. Some priests feel discouraged. They feel like, why am I doing this? What's the point? We need to pray for our priests and support our priests and let them know that we really appreciate their commitment and sacrifice they make to serve God and to serve us.
Amen.
Couldn't be said better. I want to add one thing that is not on the discussion radar at all, although there are some blog posts that have mentioned it, and that is continence. Code of Canon Law 277 paragraph 1 says that perfect and perpetual continence is demanded of all clerics. All clerics.
Yeah.
So this is now it's a Western code. Okay, so it's Western Rite, Roman Rite, but perfect continence. That means you might be married, but you are not allowed to have sexual relations. You're not permitted by the church to have sexual relations if you're a married cleric. Code of Canon Law 277 paragraph 1.
Interesting. We're going to have to leave it at that. Mark, I'm sure you had a comment about that, but we are out of time. The clock just keeps on ticking. Mark, I appreciate very much. We'll have you back, and we'll talk about that topic. But anyways, the book is called From the Depths of Our Hearts. I guess the key word in that title now is R, as Mark mentioned. Priesthood, Celibacy, and the Crisis of the Catholic Church. Mark Brumley has been my guest. Mark, thank you very much. We appreciate having you on with us this morning.
Thank you, folks. God bless you.
Thank you very
God
much.
Bless.
And, as I mentioned before, we're going to stick around. I don't know if, Dr. Chris, you can stick around or not. I know you got your job.
I've got to write that book.
Got to go write a book. And we're going to stick around for a little while on our social media platforms and talk about this a little bit more. Maybe we can talk about this continence issue. I had no idea.
Yeah, very briefly.
That's
I'll stick around for that.
All right. So stick with us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you so much, Sissel, Diane, Daniel, Dr. Chris, and all of our guests for this Friday edition of GRN Alive. Monday, join Joe and the team at 8 o'clock Central.
Thank you for listening to GRN Alive from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. For more faith, fun, and facts, join our email list. Just text the letters GRN to the number 42828. That's GRN to the number 42828. And may your Friday be filled with the joy of the Lord.
Blessed be God, blessed be His holy name, blessed be Jesus Christ, true God and true man. Blessed be the name of Jesus, blessed be His most sacred heart, Blessed be his most precious blood. Blessed be Jesus in the most holy sacrament of the altar. Blessed be the Holy Spirit, the Paraclete. Blessed be the great Mother of God, Mary most holy. Blessed be her holy and immaculate conception. Blessed be her glorious assumption. Blessed be the name of Mary, Virgin and Mother. Blessed be Saint Joseph, her most chaste spouse. Blessed be God in his angels and in his saints.
KATH 910 AM, Frisco, Dallas, Fort Worth.
Concrete methods to increase support for religious freedom, human dignity, and
Are we on? All right. I think we're on our social media platforms. I don't see myself. Diane's probably switched it. There's just a delay. So, hey, we are charting territory that we've never been at before. So let's just give this a shot. And eventually, I think we'll see ourselves pop up on the screen.
What all are we on?
We're on Facebook, and we're on YouTube, and we're on Twitter. And the Twitter TV is called Periscope.
Wow.
And so it's Periscope, which is Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. So
You sound so tech savvy.
I'll tell you, if somebody that's watching us on Facebook right now, because that's really the only one I'm monitoring, can just do me a favor and just send a message and just say, yeah, I can hear you. Maybe Joe or Tim or somebody in Houston is watching this, just so we know that we're not doing this in vain just for ourselves. Right? We're not on the radio any
No
longer.
conversation
Yeah.
is in vain, Dave.
There you go. Right. So anyways, Dr. Malloy can only stay a few minutes with us. He's got to get back to his real job at the University of Dallas. But, boy, you brought up a humdinger of a topic there at the end of the show that, Mark didn't have time to comment on it. But you want to kind of...
So celibacy and continence, two different things. Celibacy, where you're not getting married, right?
Yeah.
It's like virginity, it'd be the classical term. And continence, where you're not engaging in relations, sexual relations. And so, as a matter of fact, the ancient understanding of the church is that when Christ said, "Come follow me," we have left all things, Lord, and we're following you. And then what does our Lord say? Those who have left father, mother, wife, and children. The understanding was that the apostles left the practice of sexual relations with their wives, right? So in order to take care of them, some of them had them around for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
Raise the children and whatnot. But celibacy, clerical celibacy, goes back to the very apostolic foundations of the church. There are good books on this. I recommend it. Continence. Now, one of the first legislations that we see on this, the year 305, a council called Elvira. And at Elvira, it was commanded perpetual continence for all clerics.
Wow.
And if you violate that, you're out of the clerical state.
Mm-hmm.
And that was backed up again a few years later at Carthage. The first time that we see canonical legislation permitting only periodic continence, so that is you're preparing for liturgy, then you have a time where you're continent, is the Synod of Trullo, which is around 690 AD. So the thing is you've got this immediately people have this idea, the Eastern Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox priests are married, and they kind of deflate. Either you're celibate or you're married. But there's a practice of liturgical continence in the East still, right? And that's significant. That is, even if you're married, there's a practice of continence. And what it shows us is that there is a pinnacle, if you will. And the pinnacle, and they also, by the way, have celibate priests.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, celibacy is the prized way.
Yeah.
So yes, we do have married priests in the West, but as I brought up, Now, there's a canon lawyer named Ed Peters, and he brought this up on his blog, and I forget the title of it, The Law Brings Light or something like that. And it's a good blog, and he says, if we're going to have a discussion about celibacy, let's have a real discussion, because has anyone paid attention to Canon 277, paragraph 1, which commands perpetual and perfect continence? That is, you're a cleric in the Western, this is a Western canon, you're a cleric, you are held by the church to maintain perfect and perpetual continence.
Mm-hmm.
So now that is a law that's under the jurisdiction of the church. Of course, that law could change, but I do highly recommend. I just point our listeners to a blog by a post by Peter Kwasniewski on this topic of what about Eastern, the Eastern priests. And what about celibacy and Eastern priests? It's a very good one. You can Google it, look it up. It's on 1 Peter 5, and I recommend that piece in particular.
And just, by the way, Adriana Reyes on Facebook said she can hear us. Betty says bad connection, so I know we're having a few technical issues, but thank you to Adriana and Betty for letting us know that they can actually hear us. So very interesting. I think...
That's an important factor. So
I've had married priests because I go to an Anglican, an ordinariate parish, and so really all of our pastors for the last 10 years that I've been there, longer than that, have all been married priests. I've never once heard this.
Yeah. The other thing is that as far as bishops go, this goes way back, and it's not an exception. Bishops are in the East. They are not, if they're married bishops, right? They are to be perfectly continent. So that goes way back, and it's very important for us to take this. What's going on here? It's not just about. Although part of the consideration is, you're married, okay, and you got a salary and all this kind of stuff. And nowadays you could add, what about divorce? So you can have divorced and then remarried priests. I mean, this is going to be a disaster.
It's complicated.
But that's the practical side. The spiritual side is what Mark Brumley was talking about. It's the conformity to Christ, the person of Christ, right? Who is solely dedicated to his body, the church, right? He's, as it were, married to the church. So the priest in persona Christi is not married to a woman because he's married to the church.
Mm-hmm.
There's a configuration there to the person of Christ, and that's why it's that's the, as it were, the ontology of the thing. There's a depth there, and that's why I promise that Pope Benedict's getting at those depths with Cardinal Sarah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I gotta go.
You gonna read that book?
Who knows? I'm a slow reader. I've got a lot of other books to read.
Oh, come on.
So.
Seriously. Yeah, it's
including my own
one to read, right? Okay, well, hey, thanks so much. We will continue to chat a little bit about this. Dr. Malloy, see you next week. We'll be talking about the March for Life next week. It's happening, and really,
are we on next week?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we're on
Very
next
good.
week, and we'll have a live coverage and be
great,
connecting with people there at the march, and so it should be a lot of fun. So
another reason for my daughter.
You're pro-life, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh.
That was really awkward.
No.
Took me a second there. I blinked.
Yeah, what was that pause about? Do you have to think about it? I know that was an odd question. I'm just kidding. I know you're pro-life. All right. Hey, thanks so much.
Yep.
Good seeing you. Dr. Chris Malloy and his upcoming book, which is going to be published sometime in this year, is called Against Recent Heresies. And you better hurry up and publish it, or these heresies will no longer be recent, okay? You got to, for them to be recent, you got to actually write this book, right? Kind of recent heresies.
That's why I'm running.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, all right, Daniel DeMore joins us here as well, and Sissel Anderson, Diane Xavier. Maybe Diane could switch the camera so that everybody can see exactly what Daniel DeMore looks like. And if you're watching us on one of the platforms, unfortunately, I'm not monitoring Twitter and YouTube as far as comments.
I can monitor.
Oh, okay. So Sissel can. But I am monitoring Facebook, all right? And send us some questions. It's kind of fun. But now, Daniel, you had a comment about some discussions you've had about priestly celibacy with loved ones, and how some people just think like they just don't get it. Even you kind of, it's a little perplexing to you, right?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I've tried to talk about it with my dad before, and he doesn't seem to agree with it. My brother doesn't agree with it, and sometimes it's kind of hard for me to understand it too. But the way Dr. Chris explained it was, it kind of offered some perspective. The idea of the priest being married to the church, like the congregation, or like Christ as his bride. And that kind of makes sense. And also, like when he was saying, there's the opportunity for, if they're married, they could get divorced. And if you have divorced priests going around, that's going to be really complex, because, they're going to be annulling themselves or having to go to another priest for an annulment or something like that. And that could just get really complex. You hope they don't get divorced, but there's just, I guess it's a time thing. It's like, who do you devote your time to? The entire church or, kind of a family? So I don't know. It's tricky.
Yeah, definitely. And coming from a Protestant background, I got to see the pastors who, had to devote time to the family or to the church, and one always suffered, usually. One of them is, and you don't want that to happen. And like Dr. Malloy mentioned, is that in the Eastern Catholic churches, like the Maronite rite, that you can become a priest if you're already married, I believe. I'm not certain about the exact what the rule is, but I've known priests who have opted, even if they were engaged, opted not to continue with the engagement when they felt the call, the vocation to the priesthood, because they knew that they wanted to dedicate their whole selves to.
I know a lot of married priests. Like I said, my pastors for the last 15 years have been married. Father Dwight Longenecker is a famous, blogger and author, and he's a married former Episcopal priest, Anglican or Episcopal. He actually wrote an article that I had referenced in preparing for this. I didn't refer to it during the show, but I don't know a single one of them that's for a married priesthood. Under their circumstances, they kind of came into it, and I know none of them are saying they wish they weren't married.
Right, obviously.
But it's just they just don't support it, and they think a celibate priesthood is a better thing. Every one of them. And I think also the thing we got to keep in mind is that the grace of God can overcome concupiscence. We're all going to have concupiscence. We're all going to have, in marriage and single life. But with God's grace, we can live chastely. And that ties so much with Jason Evert's the conversation as well. To think that somebody who has same-sex attraction just absolutely cannot live celibately, I just think that that's false.
Or just any young person can't live celibate. You can live chastely until they're,
And that's the message the culture's given us.
It is, and people are genuinely, like, they think everyone's lying to say that they haven't, that they, are waiting until marriage. No one. It's unfortunate. It just shows the brokenness of love and marriage in the state of the world right now.
Yeah, certainly.
One thing I heard Jason say that I really agree with is about how, like, every human is looking for some kind of intimacy. And so intimacy doesn't necessarily have to be sexualized. I think, like, in our culture, it always has to go that direction. But you can be intimate with people in so many other ways besides that specific way. And so I think people kind of forget about that. But yeah, you can, simply just like being around someone or giving them a hug or giving them a kiss. Like, it doesn't always have to be purely sexualized. You can be intimate in so many different ways with men and women, so.
Yeah, that's so true, so true. A lot of wisdom you have, Daniel. And anyways, if you're watching, we love to have your comments. I know this is the first time we've ever done it like this, but maybe you've picked up the book by Pope Benedictt and Cardinal, you've read it and you have some comments on that. But we're not going to be on too much longer. This is our first foray into this. Thanks to Diane Xavier for setting all this up. She was just literally trained yesterday on how to do this. And Daniel's got to get trained on it because our Monday show here in North Texas, we're going to see if we can kind of get all these different platforms broadcasting this as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right. Anything else either of you want to mention about either of our topics for today, or have we exhausted it?
I don't think you can ever exhaust the topic of love and chastity, but but I think I think we should talk about it more on future shows. Honestly, that's what I was going to say. There's so much more to talk about, and I think the way sometimes that, because the culture is so against the idea of chastity, that I think we need to present it in the way that it is something better than what we have now, that what a lot of the culture is living. And the Catholic Church has a really beautiful teaching on marriage, and I think that the more and more we present that beautiful teaching, that's the way that we combat all the, kind of the sexual revolution going on now.
Yeah, definitely. Want to mention one other thing. I already said next Friday we're going to be broadcasting and going to the March for Life, but there are some more local March for Life events across the country this weekend. In fact, where we are here in Dallas, There's a big event tomorrow in downtown Dallas, and for those of you listening, I don't know, Daniel, you may know this, but Roe v. Wade started in Dallas.
Yeah.
It was, you know that. Yeah, Norman McCorvey's initial filing was at the Earl Cabell Courthouse. And so if you're in the Dallas and North Texas area, please come on out tomorrow. It starts early in the morning, and then there's a mass at the Cathedral Guadalupe, and there's going to be a march afterwards. If you're in San Antonio or D.C. or Houston or another city across our network, I'm sure there's something going on as well. But it's important that we get out to these events, and numbers do matter, because if 5 people show up versus 10,000, even if the press doesn't want to cover it, we know that we're in good company. There's a lot of pro-life people out there.
Absolutely. And people of all ages and genders need to be coming too. I just want to stress, especially young people, I think, too.
Yeah. Are you getting us into the conversation about gender by saying that? Or
I don't know. I might be in trouble right now.
All right. Daniel, last word. Anything else?
Yeah, all I got to say is, it's okay to disagree with something at first in the church if you don't understand it, but I would say to really investigate it, kind of like Dr. Chris did, go into the catechism or canon law and really try to investigate these things. It's okay to have disagreements. It's not a sin to not understand something, but I think God wants us to kind of explore these things and understand the reasons why his church has been established the way it is.
Yeah.
So,
Amen. That's a great way to close things out. Very, very well stated. Diane, thanks. Sissel, thanks. Daniel, thank you very much. And for everybody, wow, we've gone up to 7 on Facebook. All of a sudden, as we start to go off, everybody's like, okay, I'm going to watch those last 30 seconds of what they're talking about.
These are the real golden moments, obviously.
All right, we're going to close this off. Diane's going to push the off button. Thanks, everybody, for watching us on all these different platforms. Be sure to tune in to Joe and the team Monday morning, 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time for GRN Alive Monday. And then we'll see you next Friday on the radio. And we'll probably do one of these little fun after shows as well. God bless you. Have a great rest of your day and a great weekend. Saint Anthony, pray for us.